Hi, my name is Jesse at Trash Panda, and since it was just Earth Day 2 days ago, and Earth Day is super special to us, we thought it was the perfect time to share some special news. If you've been following along with the list of PDGA approved discs, then you might already know that we recently had our second disc approved. But as always, just saying it like that makes it sound way too simple. So in this video, I want to pull back the curtain on the last year and a half of designing, prototyping, and approving our new mid-range. Well, we're back in the garage, as you can tell, and a lot has changed since the last time we were in here, let alone the last time we talked about our mid-range. So I think a quick recap is in order. For those who might remember, we made a video series starting about a year and a half ago where we were designing a new mid-range, because at the time we had our putter prototype, but we hadn't quite yet released the inner core. So in the interim between those two things, we decided to start the process on designing a new mid. The first step was the first video where we tested basically every stable mid-range we could get our hands on from every manufacturer out there, and then asked you all what you like and don't like out of stable mids. From there, we took your suggestions and 3D printed 3 different prototypes and had you all vote on which one you liked the most. 3,000 of you ended up voting on option number 2. So we took option number 2, cut a mold for my garage, and ended up making a true injection molded prototype. Unfortunately, that all sounds pretty good, but by the time we'd done this, there were 2 very obvious and glaring issues. First, we had to just shelve this project altogether because it was time to release the inner core, meaning all time and effort and energy was getting dedicated to that. So unfortunately, our mid went to the back burner. But to be completely honest, that was actually okay, because the other issue we ran into with this disc was something we didn't understand yet. Basically, the problem was that the 3D printed prototype and the injection molded prototype flew completely different. For those who might remember, in the design we were aiming for something in the like 0-1 range of turn and fade, and the 3D printed version was great. But the injection molded version was more like a 0-3. It was pretty beefy, kind of like rock even verdict-esque. So it was gonna take more time and energy than we had at that moment, so our mid got shelved. And I didn't know it at the time, nor did I expect it, but this getting shelved was the perfect thing to happen because when we released the inner core, we learned some crucial lessons that would affect the design of our new mid. So we learned a ton from the inner core, and while there's way too much to talk about in one video, there is one lesson in particular that applies to the mid-range. If you remember, the 3D printed mid-range flew slightly more understable than the injection molded mid-range. But the problem with that data and taking a lesson from it is that the injection molded mid-range was made on a machine that I built in my garage. So is that really true when we get to an industrial scale? Well, we received our answer from the inner core because the 3D printed version of the inner core was slightly more understable than the final version. And by the way, our friends over at Loft Discs helped us validate this as they've had the same experience with their 3D printed prototypes. So while it wasn't ideal to shelve the mid-range project initially, it ended up being a super positive thing because of what we ended up learning from the inner core. So over the last few months, we took all of that and we didn't have to start from scratch. Instead, we took the data from the initial 3 videos, as well as like 700 comments, 3,000 votes, and 3 3D printed discs, as well as a key lesson in prototyping to injection molding, and ended up making 3 new 3D printed prototypes. So based on these 3, our team took the one we thought would work the best and sent it off to be made into a mold. And we all know, while that was exciting and there were a lot of lessons learned, nothing ever works out on the first try, right? All right, we're moving pretty quickly, and I just want to take a second to give a summary because I've talked about a lot of different things. Basically, we're trying to make the perfect, stable mid-range. In an effort to do so, we made 3 videos and learned a ton of lessons. Additionally, we made a disc, launched it to the world, and also learned a ton of lessons. So we took all of the lessons learned, as well as some of the money we made from launching that first disc, and put all of those things together to make that perfect straight flying mid-range. Based on reason, that means everything should work out perfectly. But based on experience, I wasn't expecting that. But much to my surprise, everything worked out perfectly, and earlier this year, we received the first test part for what would eventually become our new mid-range.
Sooner than we thought we'd have these. This is the first version of what will be our mid-range, actually injection molded, true prototype, first flight ever. Literally have not thrown them. It's super muddy, so you can tell they haven't been thrown. Slight headwind. I think they're gonna go pretty straight. I'm just gonna throw it flat. I'm just gonna try to get it flat, maybe a slight anhyzer. We'll see what happens. Oh, I gave it hyzer and it held. I'm very happy with that flight. Let's try it one more time. I'm gonna go flat.
Being very happy with how it flew in Denver, and with our team being equally as happy, there were a few more tests to perform before we sent it off to be approved. And some of them get in the weeds a little bit, but the most important one was going to sea level. Because how this flies at sea level will impact most people, and it's one of the biggest questions we get asked. So, and there it is, with it tested at sea level, with a name we loved, and with a beautiful story behind what was turning out to be a beautiful disc. We sent it in to be PDGA approved. And apparently we didn't just learn one thing the first time around, because it also got approved the first time around, much to our delight. So without further ado, this is the Trash Panda Dune. There's a lot more to come, and we've got still some work ahead of us, as well as plenty more to share with you. But for the purposes of this video, I've got 2 sneak peeks for you. And the first is the engraving on the bottom. As many may remember from the inner core, we had fun with the engraving on the bottom, and it didn't stop with this one. But so many people asked us to make our next disc with an O in the name so it could go around that sprue bushing, but instead we went in a different direction and we had a lot of fun, and I think took this one to an even greater level. So I promise we'll show you more, but here is your translucent sneak peek. Alright, so I know you've been waiting this whole video to see how this disc flies, so I want to do that right now. But before I do, I just want to set clear expectations. In order to release the Dune to the public, we have a lot of work in front of us, meaning it's still going to be a couple of months. But don't worry, because we actually have another release that's coming out before that we've teased in our last few videos, so stay tuned. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to support the channel, and we'll see you next time. I don't know if you just saw that, but it's basically the inner core of mids.